Hello, my friends. It is December 26th, the day after Christmas, and this is the daily brief. So there are 1540 Russian casualties on Christmas Day. 2 tanks, 10 armored fighting vehicles, 24 artillery systems, 63 vehicles and fuel tanks. If we looked at that 1540 and we plug it in to the spreadsheet, what we find is that last month there was 1515 casualties as an average, daily average in November. In October was 1354. Now 1515 has become 1552 with 40,000 with 5 days to go. So yeah, we're easily going to be in the highest month of casualties over the course of the war. And your Perpetua's list is looking pretty much like it's about 2 to 1, maybe something along those lines, something very close to that, maybe a little bit more than 2 to 1 Russian losses to Ukrainian losses yesterday. He put out this comment: I'm the type of stupid that stayed up too late geolocating stuff, and now I'm screwed for the day. He's got a tough job doing what he does. Ukraine's Air Force reported the overnight Shahed drone attack. Out of 31 launched, 60 were shot down, another 11 were suppressed by electronic warfare. As we know, they can produce about 60, 64 per day. So I would normally be nervous about only seeing 31 when they can produce 64 per day on average. But they just unloaded 180, what was it, 184 rockets and Shaheds the day before on Christmas Eve into Christmas. So I'm not worried about it like I would otherwise be, because maybe they were just dipping into the future. Anna from Ukraine was talking about it like this Christmas night: Ukrainian children are worried about Santa's safety in the skies, all because of Russia's massive missile attack. A good New Year's resolution in 2025: let's make Russia small again. Yeah, I mean, think about that. I mean, it's a funny way of saying it that children are worried about Santa's safety in the skies, but yeah, they were under a massive drone attack on Christmas Day. So, okay. Now, December 25th isn't just a special day because it's Christmas. It isn't a special day for most Russians for religious reasons either, but it's a uniquely wonderful time for being the day that the cursed Soviet Union ceased to exist. Next up, finish a Soviet zombie security state. This is Garry Kasparov, Putin's mafia regime. But yeah, that's what happened. It was on Christmas back 3 years ago, something along those lines. Okay, December 26th, the day after Christmas, December 26th, Russian kamikaze drone strike hits a central market in Nikopol. I mean, 8 people are injured, 1 woman in critical condition. They're hitting a market. Like, I understand what's going on the battlefield, and it's tragic what's going on there. But hitting a civilian market, uh, yeah. But this happens every day. I mean, hitting a market or a civilian apartment complex or something along those lines. And then they'll lie and say, yeah, we hit a HIMARS system or something along those lines. Ukraine's Stratcom confirmed a precision strike by Ukraine's Air Force on a military-industrial facility in Rostov region. Target produced solid rocket fuel for ballistic missiles. So that's a good place to hit, not a market. Hitting a market is not really useful. Hitting a facility that produces solid rocket fuel, that's really helpful. And then the strategic Russian military airfield was reportedly under attack, 175 kilometers from Ukraine. I don't think anything was hit, like planes were hit. The explosions hit near the Baltimore military airfield in Voronezh in Russia on early on December 26th. But it looks like, from what I can see, even though there's like a big fireball, you can see that there is some kind of significant burning there. What I understand was that it was hitting some buildings, but was shot down otherwise, not actually getting to planes. Okay, Notepad recovered from one of the thousands of North Korean casualties describes the tactics of avoiding and downing drones by simply throwing items toward the incoming drone, which doesn't seem like it's going to be a useful strategy, or using one soldier as bait with others then attempting to shoot them down. And so they even have this picture here where here's the drone, and this is like the North Koreans taking their notes about how to go about conducting anti-drone attacks on the battlefield, and that's not going to work out so well. There's even memes like this: corporate needs you to find a difference between this picture and that picture. They're the same picture. right? I mean, and when you're looking at cavemen trying to get on either side of a mammoth, or I guess that's a woolly mammoth, as opposed to what's going on here. Yeah, I mean, but of course, these North Koreans, they have some great strategy. Look at these generals and the amount of awards that they have. I mean, this guy's got awards down his leg and on his arms, sleeves, and that sort of thing. So, Jason J. Smart talked about how North Korea has lost a massive number of soldiers in Ukraine. It's wild when you consider that they have the most highly decorated military in human history. Or maybe nepotism doesn't pay off. Now, when he says nepotism, as I understand, and I could be wrong, but I understand that they can wear awards, not just that their own awards, but the awards inherited from their father and grandfather, right? Like, so that passes down. So that accounts for some of this. But these guys haven't actually fought in any conflict anywhere. Remember, North Korea is the hermit kingdom. They haven't fought anywhere since what, 1950s, something like that. Okay, anyway. Okay, so Ukraine targets some more information here about what's gone on Christmas and the day after. Ukraine targets Russian commander in central Kursk Oblast, eliminates Marine Brigade commander. That was good. Ukraine HIMARS attack on Lvov reportedly killed a deputy commander and 7 officers of Russia's 810th Marine Brigade. Russian soldiers are complaining about, this was really interesting, Russian soldiers are complaining about unknown individuals posing as volunteers. These volunteers arrange meetings at specific times and locations only for missile strikes to hit the area soon thereafter. So that's one way of doing it. Okay, since February, at least 184 Ukrainians have died in Russian captivity. Now, that's not supposed to happen. If you're a captive, you're supposed to be afforded certain treatments, medical, and make sure you have enough food and that sort of thing to keep you alive. The organization collected testimonies from 122 Ukrainian servicemen. Oh, by the way, this 184 is that we know of. Certainly the number is higher than that. But they collected testimonies from 122 Ukrainian servicemen who had been held prisoner of war by Russia. These accounts revealed systematic and you can read what that is, isolation from the outside world, denial of proper medical care. And certainly, I've seen accounts that you see the T as more than 90% of Ukrainians captured by the Russians. Okay, let's look at the battlefield. We see Kherson region, 2 attempts to attack. And we see in the Zaporizhia region, 2 enemy attacks. And we see in Kharkiv direction, 3 combat engagements. And we see Kupiansk direction, 7 attacks. Northwest of Horlivka, 12 assaults on Ukrainian positions. Seversk direction, you see 2 attacks in one direction, and on the Bakhmut front, you see 11 attacks. So you see Lyman direction, 26 attacks. Vernika direction, 34 attacks. Kharkov direction, 31 attacks. Pokrovsk is, of course, the big, where most of the attacks are focused, at 55 assaults on Christmas Day. Okay, so Russian troops have lost almost half of their stocks of heavy military equipment, including all pre-war stocks of T-90 tanks and a significant part of T-80s. So that's reported by the Voice of America. As of December 22nd, Russian forces had 47% of the pre-war tank reserves, 52% of pre-war infantry fighting vehicles, and 45% of pre-war armored personnel carriers. So, they're being pretty well hammered by this war. In addition, the ISW noted that Russian troops have used up all of their pre-war T-90 tanks, almost all of their T-80 tanks, but they still have most of their old T-72, T-64, 62, and T-54 55s in stock. So they're going to be dwindling down into like World War II era tanks before very long. Now, this is really interesting. So, and this is actually the headline here. On December 25th, drones attacked 3 regions in the North Caucasus, in Chechnya and South Ossetia, and but in that, it caused something else, and that's really important. So this attack I talked about very briefly in Chechnya. Local telegram channels reported that 4 initial explosions in the Chechen capital of Grozny, later reported more drone activities in the region, and 1 drone was downed in the Shali district using Panzer S-1 air defense system. So while this drone attack is going on, something else happened. So when the Ukrainians attacked Chechnya before, there was no air defense. And Andrew Perpetua's comment was, who needs a Panzer when you can have a drunk guy in the back of a golf cart, right? And so Russian air defense, a bunch of AKs and some shotguns and a flare mortar, top of the line technology in modern Russia. Now, this isn't a picture of what was happening there, but that's equivalent of what was happening there. Now, because they didn't have it before, we weren't thinking that this is what was going to happen. So they now moved air defense there, it appears, and Russian air defense is most likely the cause of a crash of a 190 passenger plane during a UAV attack in Chechnya. So air defense was alerted and this civilian airplane was downed, and they're not taking credit for knocking down the civilian airplane, or at least I haven't seen this yet. An Embraer 190 passenger plane belonging to Azerbaijan Airlines crashed this morning, 67 passengers, of which 5 crew members were on board. 32 people survived the crash. It was a horrible incident. Now, but it got worse. And like at the same time, you see Russian channels claiming an F-16 was shot down over Zaporizhia. I don't know if it was, but they couldn't act, they barely got a civilian airliner to come down with this. So I'm not sure about F-16s. We'll see if an F-16 was hit. We'll see very shortly. It'll be all over the news. Okay, there's increased speculation, and it looks very clear now that in the Russian media that this flight was shot down by Russian air defenses that mistook it for a Ukrainian drone. I'm not sure how you think that that's going to be a Ukrainian drone, but footage of the damage to the fuselage, you see it's just riddled with stuff. The Azerbaijani government sources have confirmed that this flight was shot down by a Russian missile. This was reported by Euronews. And this isn't even everything. According to these government sources, the damaged aircraft was not allowed to land at any Russian airport, despite the pilot's request for an emergency landing. So you shot it, and then you would not allow it to land at the closest airport. Good move. Okay, according to the data, the GPS navigation systems were also jammed throughout the flight path above the sea. Okay, and they said, no, go over the Caspian Sea. An attempt. So they wouldn't allow them to land anywhere close, and then they had them fly over toward all the way to Kazakhstan. And so now this is just speculation, but it was an attempt to have the plane crash over the open sea, maybe. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know that that's even fair. That's what Tender is saying. I'm trying to piece this together myself. Government sources have told Euronews that the damaged aircraft was not allowed to land at any Russian airports despite the pilot's request for an emergency landing. It was ordered to fly over the Caspian Sea toward Kazakhstan. The Russians didn't just shoot down a civilian aircraft in their airspace, but they also denied the pilot's emergency landing at one of the nearest airports, sending the damaged aircraft with passengers and crew along a 400 to 500 kilometer flight over the Caspian Sea to Kazakhstan. Like, think about that. Campaign just wrapped up. We'll do a special. Greg and I will talk about just like what the actual total is. It's about $141,000 at this point, and that means that they got many more drones than was initially requested, which means those drones can stay up and rotate quicker and do a whole lot more good. And this is just fantastic to see. Okay, last little bit from Darth Putin. As Ukraine keeps defending itself, they are to blame for any civilian aircraft we shoot down during our invasion. Does that make sense to you? I mean, that's their logic. And finally, everything's going to be all right. The positivity that these guys show, in spite of everything that they're holding up under, wow. It's just amazing. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.